do this correctly.
Oh, there you go.
All right, everybody. So, Steph, did I just cut you off?
No, I was just mentioning to everyone, just make sure that everyone is muting themselves unless they want to have a question, just that way, so that way when we're recording it, there's not a lot of feedback. So I'm going to mute myself now too.
Awesome, thank you. Yes, absolutely. So before we get started here too, I just want to have everybody write in the chat your name, if you don't mind, just so that I can take a quick attendance and make sure that I have everybody here so we can give everybody credit that they deserve for attending the training with the back office. So if you can go ahead and write in the chat for me that you are here, I would greatly appreciate that. I'll give you guys a minute or two to do that. All right, awesome. Thank you guys for doing that. So obviously this training here is about telehealth. So we have been talking quite a bit about telehealth the past week or so, what telehealth services might look like. And given the coronavirus situation that we're currently in, that, you know, presents a higher need for telehealth right now. So we wanted to make sure that we give you guys this training so that we can make sure you know more about telehealth and how you might provide those services. So at Key, we are committed to, continuing to provide ABA services to our clients and families as much as we possibly can during the COVID-19 crisis. So we want to make sure that our clients, especially because they're not accessing school right now and their regular schedules and routines, that we can continue to provide services in any capacity that we can. So one huge way in which we are doing that is through the use of telehealth. So telehealth will definitely look different in some ways than our traditional in-person services. That said, it will be important to remember if you do provide telehealth services, you know, and you're like, what the heck are we doing? This is so different. It's so hard to identify what to work on, and the BCBA is changing things and we're trying to figure out the flow of what a telehealth session looks like. All of that said, the underlying factor here is that any services are better than no services at this point. So some programs might look different. Some goals, we might change some goals. Some programs might be put on hold. We might, completely change the way that we prompt our clients to complete certain skills. All of that said, in these difficult circumstances that we're currently in, we have to consider that some level of services is most certainly better than no services at all. So that's one thing that we are keeping in mind in terms of providing telehealth services. And for many of our clients, telehealth services might be really helpful. More specifically, direct services through telehealth might be very helpful, in addition to the other types of telehealth that we can provide. So in terms of how this might look with your case, the BCBA who works with you on the case will speak with you if they haven't already in terms of what telehealth looks like, and then also if BT telehealth services with your specific client is appropriate. So there's a lot of different moving parts here in terms of whether or not your client is eligible for telehealth services. So part of that is just the BCBA deeming that it's clinically appropriate to do so. Also the parents being okay with telehealth services and giving consent to do telehealth services, and then also whether or not insurance covers the telehealth services. So as of right now, given the COVID-19 crisis, there is much more approval and understanding of the insurance companies to provide telehealth services, which is a great thing. But like I said, there are a lot of moving parts in terms of whether or not your client is eligible and or appropriate for telehealth services. So all of that said, many of our BTs have made the personal decision to continue providing in-home ABA services to their clients, taking the necessary precautions, both in the home and outside of the home, and that families are also doing the same thing. So if everybody's comfortable, the BT is still providing in-home ABA services, the family's okay with that, everybody's fine with the situation as it stands, then you can continue to provide those services. There's no need or reason to switch to telehealth if everybody's healthy, everybody's comfortable, and everybody's taking the necessary precautions to continue providing the in-home services. So that's one thing to keep in mind, is that if you are providing in-home services at this point and everything's going fine, then you don't need to switch to telehealth. Your BCBA will talk to you about whether that changes. If there is a need to have telehealth services, you know, you've probably at this point had that conversation with your BCBA, and they will be your point person in terms of telehealth services and how that might look if it's an option for your client. So at this point, there is a state mandated shelter in place. So all of that said, if you are still comfortable providing the BT services with those precautions taken, we as ABA service providers are deemed essential medical personnel, so we can continue to provide those in-home ABA services. On that same note, given that we are in the state mandated shelter in place here and in Atlanta, I believe it's just Atlanta, not the state of Georgia yet at this point. But if you are still providing the in-home ABA services, we do have a kind of a pass, we're calling it, so that you have the documentation that you need should you be questioned for, you know, driving and going to your client and those kinds of things. Please reach out to myself. Again, this is Caitlin Barbuzzi. I'm one of the BT managers here who can provide you with that pass or that information that you need, or you can reach out to Jennifer Scott if she is your BT manager. So either of us can help you get that taken care of. So if you are providing direct in-home services at this point, please do, like I said, reach out to one of us so we can get you the appropriate documentation that you need.
Caitlin, just as an FYI, excuse me, I believe Jen Height in Georgia stated that there is actually going to be a shelter in place that starts at, I think it's midnight tonight.
Okay.
For the area of Atlanta. I know that was, excuse me, that was something that kind of just happened today. So it's always good to just, you know, regardless of anything and what state you're in, just obviously stay in touch as much as possible. For Massachusetts, obviously the entire state, it doesn't matter what county you're in, the entire state has the shelter in place advisory. So I'm not from Georgia. I know that it's broken up a little bit differently. And so I don't necessarily know if it's statewide or if it's just for Atlanta right now. But, you know, you can always clearly go online. There's plenty of information, somewhat too much information these days regarding, you know, things like this. But I do believe that's the update as of today.
Awesome.
It's Fulton County.
Fulton County, you said?
Fulton County in Atlanta, Georgia. It's
Great.
That's going through that.
Okay, thank you so much for clarifying. That's super helpful.
No problem.
So the same thing would apply regardless of what state you're in. The same thing would apply in terms of the essential medical personnel pass that we have, and you would still contact either Caitlin Barbuzzi or Jen Scott for that, and we'll get that to you guys as soon as possible.
Thank you, ladies. So one last thing to note here is that we can't say thank you enough times to our BTs who are continuously providing services to our clients, and whether that's in-home, providing the direct in-home services, or if you do end up switching or you are providing telehealth services to your clients, we really, really appreciate all of your hard work. We know it is not an easy time for anybody right now, given the COVID-19 crisis, and we want to make sure that we not only thank you for your support and your dedication to us at Key, but that also we can support you in any way possible. So, you know, we are doing our best to educate ourselves on telehealth and grow and develop and be able to use this as a great resource for us in terms of providing services. So anything that we can do to support you at this time as well is something that we want to make sure that we are here to support and make changes and develop and communicate as we go along, especially in terms of telehealth. So the objectives of the training is that by the end, you will be able to define telehealth services, understand and convey the benefits of telehealth services, understand what's eligible for telehealth, what we can provide and what we cannot provide, understand multiple requirements that are necessary for telehealth to occur, utilize some tools designed to access telehealth for their clients, and identify and address any ethical concerns related to telehealth as well. So we will address all of these things today. So first and foremost, what is telehealth? It is defined as the mode of delivering healthcare services and communication technologies to facilitate the, not so much diagnosis for us, but the consultation, treatment, education, care management, and self-management of a client's healthcare while the patient is at an originating site and the healthcare provider, or in our case, the BT and the BCBA, is at a distant site. So that's the main thing to point out here with telehealth, is that it can be a variety of things, of which there's always an originating site. So that's where the client is receiving services. In this situation, it will be in their home, and at a distant site, which is where the BT or the BCBA is providing the services, which is, like I said, most likely in their home as well. Telehealth is not a distinct service, so it's not something different from direct ABA therapy. For example, it is just a different modality in which we provide that direct ABA therapy. So the standard of care is the exact same, whether it's in person or via telehealth. So like I said, there's an originating site and a distant site. The originating site is going to be in the client's home, and the distant site is where the BCBA or the BT is providing the telehealth services. Telehealth, again, it can be a variety. It can be two different types of service. However, for our purposes, we are using two-way real-time interactive communication between yourself, so you as a BT and the BCBA, and the client or the parent in the home. And we will be using that, like I said, in a variety of ways. I'll talk about parent training versus direct therapy versus supervision and those things down the road. But that is, again, one important thing about the way that we can provide telehealth is that it is two-way, real-time, just the same exact way that we are interacting right now. The clinical rationale here is really important too, in terms of why and how we will provide telehealth services. So there are a lot of benefits to this. We are able to see that there's an increased client, family, and BT and BCBA access to each other. So we are able to, potentially provide more services as there is an increased demand for them. We can also see improved oversight of treatment when used in technically both synchronous and asynchronous. So synchronous is a way of saying two-way real time, just like I said, how we're interacting right now, whereas asynchronous is something called store and forward, which is ultimately, in our case, it would be taking videos and then viewing them later. We are only providing synchronous transmissions or synchronous services at this point. That's all we're approved to do, is that two-way real-time via Zoom telehealth service. But that does, like I said, a benefit of that is it does give us the opportunity to have, more supervision opportunities, have an improvement in the oversight of the treatment, across individuals, and have the opportunity to see more of the treatment being implemented and maybe in a different way. But it also helps us improve in terms of coordination of care with the client, the family, other professionals, and stakeholders working with the client as well. So we are in the first, the early stages, the first couple of weeks of this COVID-19 crisis, but I do anticipate that over time we will be able to collaborate with other professionals and stakeholders who do have, a role in the client's development and the client's treatment planning, maybe from a different perspective. So that will be something that will be interesting to see develop over time as well. And then we can also see, again, a benefit of telehealth services being provided is that we have the ability to access multiple locations for services in a really easy way. So some information about the requirements in order for a client to receive telehealth. So first note right out of the get-go here is that not all clients may be eligible or clinically appropriate for telehealth services, and this is for a variety of reasons. It may just not be an option for your client. This is something that you can discuss with your BCBA if you haven't already. Providers must also still comply with HIPAA, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, when providing services. So that's something that we can guide you with in terms of how to make sure you are in compliance with HIPAA standards. One way in which you can start by guaranteeing that is by only using Zoom as your platform, and we'll talk about that in a little bit here as well. But it is important to make sure we are abiding by all HIPAA guidelines. Currently, the eligible providers in ABA service industry are BTs and BCBAs, so we are both BTs and BCBAs are eligible to provide telehealth services right now. We need to also make sure that we always obtain consent for services. This can be verbal or written. So telehealth allows for verbal and written consent by the client or the client's parents, but must still document that permission was given. So here at Key, we have a separate written consent for telehealth services, and the Key operations team has been handling that alongside BCBAs. So that is something that the back office has been working diligently on to make sure that we do have a separate written consent for telehealth services. So currently the services that are eligible for telehealth are supervision by a BCBA, parent training by a BCBA, and potentially services by a BT when deemed clinically appropriate by the BCBA. So also in that category is direct skill-based assessment. It says here that this may be changing given the current situation. I believe that has already changed. So BCBAs are able to complete direct skill-based assessment using telehealth as well. So that leaves us with communication via email, telephone, or fax, which is not eligible for telehealth. So like I said before, there are two types of what they call transmissions for telehealth services. First, we have synchronous transmissions, which is the referral to live two-way video and audio interactions between the provider and the client, which is the most commonly employed modality within ABA. So that is all we are able to use here at Key. We are not going to be utilizing what's called asynchronous transmissions. That's like what I said before, which is called store and forward, which includes the transmission of electronic health records like video, data, things like that that can be reviewed later. Here at Key, we are only approved through insurance to use synchronous transmission, so that's the only type of telehealth that we will be using. Here is just a visual here to explain what those synchronous transmissions might look like. So this is describing supervision using telehealth, but we can insert any type of direct service, supervision, parent training into this model. So first, we have the ABA supervisor at a distant site. They have computer and with audio and video, and also a similar device to that at the origination site. There's ongoing intervention at the origination site, either by a BT or the parent or caregiver. And then there's feedback and instruction by the ABA supervisor from a distant site to the origination site in real time. So again, it looks the exact same for that example for supervision, whereas the model looks the same. It's just that the locations are different for the BCBA and the client. So examples of how we might use telehealth. So the first and foremost, which will highly impact you if you are providing direct telehealth services. So this will it will definitely be different than how you would complete a direct session in the home with the client. Obviously, you can't physically prompt your client to do things through Zoom. You can't use body positioning. You can't use any type of physical stimuli and prompt them to use those stimuli during your session in the same room with them. So that makes it a little bit more challenging in terms of how you might follow through with those things that require physical prompting. So the BCBA is working alongside parents a lot of the time before we will implement direct therapy via telehealth. So we are working on making sure that the parent is aware of what they might have to do during these types of direct sessions. A lot of the time it ends up being that parents are kind of your hands. So you might provide all of the verbal prompts and the structure and the flow of a session, but again, you can't follow through and physically prompt your client at this point. So that might require the parent to be there and be prepared to complete some physical prompting or some follow through and use different strategies that we work on with the parent so that they are, like I said, able to kind of act as your hands during the session. So Again, the direct therapy session will look a lot different from client to client for sure. Depends on a lot of different things in terms of the clinical rationale behind providing direct services. And it will most likely not be very easy from the beginning. So that's one thing to keep in mind, is that this is a learning curve for all of us. The underlying factor here, like I said at the beginning, is that any services are better than no services at all. So we are asking for everybody to be patient and understanding, but also to help think outside of the box in terms of what we can use during direct therapy sessions that we might be using telehealth for, because again, it's not going to be the same thing. It's not going to be the same format, the same programs necessarily as exactly what you would do during a direct in-person session. So it will take a lot of collaboration and communication with your BCBA and the parents as well. So we're very happy that we can provide telehealth services, as it will help us continue services with a lot of our clients when we might not otherwise be able to. So again, it will look a lot different, but it will be something that is, again, a learning curve for all of us. And it's actually pretty exciting that we get to provide these services and continue to provide services in the current situation.
Keelan, just to jump in and kind of dovetail off of that, in the training session that happened earlier this afternoon when I was on with Jen, people were asking questions in terms of, will the BCBAs be providing us materials? What would we be using? Would we be using virtual materials? Would they be emailing the parents materials? Again, like Caitlin said, you're going to be working collaboratively with your BCBA to figure out how exactly that's going to look and what's going to happen. However, this is something where your first session, your BCBA is going to be there with you, and they can also model for you how they want the programs to look, show you exactly what they anticipate happening during the session, and then you're going to be kind of problem solving with them as you go. In addition, if you guys remember back to, when you first were working with your client, either whether it was through Key or another agency or in a school, you usually pair yourself, right, with the client first. And so you kind of take it back to that level where the first couple, sessions, maybe even weeks, are pairing yourself again with the client with this form of communication and this form of technology and this avenue with which we're using to provide services. And so you're going to kind of, go to a lower demand model, and you're going to be, doing a lot of enticement with the client and trying to figure out what works best in this model that we're using. So, to take some stress and anxiety away from people if they're feeling it at all, it's a learning experience, like Caitlin said, but it's also an exciting time because you kind of get to be really flexible in terms of your clinical thinking, and you also get to get a little bit more creative as well.
I agree, Stephanie, and I think that's a good thing to keep in mind too, is to help lower some anxiety. It's not, you won't be alone, for the first couple of sessions. That's one of the great things about telehealth, is that we have the opportunity to overlap quite a bit more. So you can anticipate having your BCBA on board with you the first couple of times as well, which will be nice to have that level of support. So we can also do treatment plan development and modification through telehealth as well. So again, this will be a lot more on the BCBA side of things, but that said, you will probably, have more insight on some programs and some things that you may have been providing on a regular basis, probably pre-COVID-19. So being able to complete treatment plan development and change some programs and modify some goals and those kinds of things will be great for BCBAs to do. And then again, they may look to collaborate with you on some ideas that you have in terms of how we can modify goals and how we can build in the telehealth format into some of our goals as well. We can also provide supervision via telehealth. So again, this can be whether the BT is providing direct in-home services or if you are providing direct telehealth services. So we will continue to provide supervision on an ongoing basis, whether you are in person or on telehealth. So if you are providing in-home direct services, the way that it will look in terms of your BCBA providing telehealth supervision is that they will talk to you beforehand about the session and what the telehealth services will look like. They will have you probably use your phone or an iPad or computer, whatever works best for you. And we'll kind of use Zoom to kind of come into that session and provide the regular feedback and supervision that they would provide if they were there in person. So this doesn't look drastically different because you will still be providing the direct services if you're in the home. And the BCBA will again be able to probably not model as much with the client, but we'll be able to provide that feedback for you and modify goals and programming and how you implement things and make those changes with you through that regular supervision model. If you are providing telehealth services and your BCBA is also providing telehealth supervision, that will obviously look a little bit different. And like Stephanie said, it's something where we'll be on with you for the first time, if not the first couple of times, and we will make changes as we go, and we'll provide feedback and model how to implement your direct therapy sessions. If we're providing supervision via Zoom as well, it gives us a great opportunity to model that and show you, what ideas we have and what strategies we're going to start out with. I had a direct session this morning and this afternoon with the same client, and my first session in the morning was like completely 360 degrees different from what I did in the afternoon. So it was, and after my afternoon session, I was so excited. I was like, holy moly, we just made so much progress in 2 separate 1-hour blocks today in this telehealth format. So it was really cool to be able to see the changes. And again, that's what your BCBA will do, is probably switch things up at the beginning quite a bit, but you will be, again, if you're providing direct services, your BCBA will be on with you making those changes, and you'll get to be a big part of that and seeing that model as you go through and make the changes and identify how the telehealth services will be provided. So we can also provide parent caregiver training through telehealth. So again, this looks primarily a bit different for BCBAs rather than how it might affect you guys as BTs, but we can provide parent caregiver training through telehealth with our parents. So if we are continuing to provide telehealth services for BTs, direct services, or in person or remote, then our parent training might incorporate what those changes might look like, how the parents might be involved, and what their level of involvement will be with direct sessions going forward. So our parent training that we can do remotely might also work on teaching some skills that they can work on with the client during direct sessions if we're providing either in person or direct via telehealth. We can also use telehealth for working on coordination of care for our clients. So one thing right here is just identifying that we are able to continue providing services for our clients. And that's something that's really great. Again, that we have this as an outlet, as an opportunity to continue with services for our clients, because again, in these kind of uncertain times, it's really nice to have some level of consistency and be able to continuously provide these services. We can also complete discharge planning via telehealth. So again, this won't have too much to do with you guys and what your day-to-day will look like, but we can do discharge planning with our clients if it is clinically appropriate to do so. I cannot imagine at this time right now, while our clients are not in school, that there is absolutely nothing that we could work on with them in terms of what we could work on for clinical, from a clinical rationale. But that said, we are approved and able to do discharge planning with our clients. So in terms of some tips for telehealth, first and foremost, our BCBAs will be utilizing an additional some assessment materials that we might not always use in terms of identifying the eligibility of telehealth for our clients. So one of those things that we will do right out of the gate is identify that the client has access to the necessary items to use telehealth services. So that includes high-speed internet, some type of technology like a camera, phone, iPad, computer, and make sure that we have access to those very crucial items to be able to provide telehealth services. So that's a big part of the initial assessment done by a BCBA, if we can even provide services logistically or not. We also want to make sure that there is the ability to have the client and the direct care staff member within view of the camera at all times, so that if we're providing clinical supervision and you're providing in-person direct therapy, that we are able to view that. Any other equipment that you might need is also something that we want to think about. I want to say that, but also identify that we try to keep it as simple as possible in terms of the materials and extra kind of technologies that we need, like a camera mount, for example. We do not expect families to go out and buy, you know, an iPad mount for the wall just so that we have the optimal view during our supervision or during our direct telehealth sessions. We don't need to go above and beyond like that. We just need to be able to interact in real time and have it be so that the client, the family, the BT and the BCBA can all view each other, and that we can access audio and video in real time. We also, as part of our initial assessment, is we need to conduct a risk and benefit analysis with regard to challenging behaviors. So making sure that the client will not pose a greater threat to themselves or others if we are providing telehealth services. The question here is definitely very important, which is, does the client present with behavior that would be better managed within the home setting? The answer to that right now is more likely than not going to be yes, it would be better managed in the home. But that said, right now that might not be an option. So it will, like I said, kind of help BCBAs think outside of the box in terms of how to work on parent training, in terms of responding to problem behavior and what we can do using telehealth services to follow the behavior plan and how to address these things using telehealth. We also need to make sure that we identify if a crisis plan is necessary in order to implement services. So if it is, we need to develop that further and make sure that everybody is trained on what that crisis plan might look like. In terms of the ethical considerations to providing telehealth services, we need to make sure that we obtain informed consent, which I talked about a little bit before, but we need to also make sure that we educate everybody involved in terms of what a telehealth session ultimately will look like. We need to make sure that we identify the benefits and risks of this, and also just give an overview of what to expect from a telehealth session. Again, what to expect might change from session to session, from day to day, and that's okay, but we do want to make sure that we are providing as much information and as much education as we possibly can to parents, to families, and to the staff as well. So families should be educated on what type of service we provide. Again, we aren't using that store and forward modality, but rather are using the live video streaming option, so we want to make sure that they are aware of that. And then also we want to make sure that we can teach our families, you know, what the main differences are going to be between direct in-person and remote telehealth direct sessions, and kind of give them an idea of what will look different in terms of the services that we are providing. Another thing that I touched on before that is very important is that client privacy and confidentiality are protected under HIPAA, and we need to make sure that the app that we use is HIPAA compliant. So here at Key, we are only utilizing Zoom for any and all telehealth related services. So Key will send you an email. It has to be sent through Key in order for it to be HIPAA compliant. So Key will send you an email if you are providing telehealth services with steps on how to create and set up your account. Ultimately, Key is kind of like the umbrella for the one big account that we have with Zoom, and then you will be underneath that big umbrella, so we know you will be covered under HIPAA. So that being under that Key umbrella is the way that we can guarantee that the Zoom that you're using is HIPAA compliant. So again, we are only utilizing Zoom. We're not using FaceTime, Skype for Business, nothing like that. We are only using Zoom, and it has to be under that, like I said, that kind of umbrella account. So you will get access to an email that has the steps on how to do that and how to set up your Zoom account if you are providing telehealth services. In terms of the safety of telehealth services and how we are going to assess for that. So crisis procedures should be implemented as planned with the BCBA. We, as BCBAs, will be accessing peer review as necessary. The amount of collaboration going on right now between BCBAs is extraordinarily high, and it's awesome. But we are making sure that we're doing everything we possibly can to ensure that we are providing the best possible services that we can to our clients and giving the stakeholders involved, like parents and family and BTs, the best education that we can in terms of what the crisis procedures are, what the behavior plan is, some strategies, some tips and tricks in terms of telehealth, and making sure that we're doing everything we can to provide all of that information. Any behavior plan that's utilized within telehealth should include that crisis information, and we should identify any criteria for 911 as well. So families will have access to this as well. And we want to make sure that if a client, BT, or family member is put in an unsafe environment due to the nature of a telehealth session, the BT or family member should contact the BCBA immediately to let us know of that, so that we can make changes and adjustments as needed. Unless it's an emergency, in which case contact 911 first. We do not need you to contact us if there's an emergency situation in the home. Please don't tell us first. Please take care of the emergency and contact 911 first, and then kind of bring us up to speed after that. If it's an emergency, please follow 911 emergency protocol. So in terms of the technology and telehealth, all of these things listed here may be applicable to a telehealth session. However, that said, we want to make sure, again, that I'm reiterating that we should keep it as simple as possible while assuring client privacy. So all of these requirements will be reviewed with you by your BCBA if you are providing telehealth services. And some of the things on here might be really important, like some tablet technology, wireless earbuds, a mobile Wi-Fi device, all things like that can definitely be helpful, with the underlying idea that we want to keep it as simple as possible for our families, for the client, and for staff as well. So like I said before, we are only utilizing Zoom in terms of the platform that we use to provide telehealth services. So you will receive an email from Key to set up your Zoom account prior to providing services, like I said before. You will accept the email invite from Zoom, go on to zoom.com to set up your online account. You will download Zoom to your computer or phone, and then you can share your personal meeting information with clients. The way that it generates in Zoom is you will create a meeting, or your BCBA will create the first couple of meetings at the very least. It will automatically generate a link and a phone number and a meeting ID, and then that will be sent to parents. It's typically kept the same for every session, so it's always the same link, always the same number and meeting ID. And then when it's session time, you'll go in and launch the Zoom app, click on meetings, and then click start. So it's a really simple technology. That's another reason why it's great that we're only using Zoom, because it is very intuitive. You're all on it right now, so you have some familiarity already at this point. And then once you're in the meeting, you can share your screen, or others can share your screen the way that I'm doing that now as well. So again, it's really intuitive. It's pretty easy to follow, and everybody will be using the same thing. So we have a lot of support resources with Zoom as well. It's always good to make sure that you have good connectivity as well. So make sure that you are on, the strongest Wi-Fi that you have. It's always good to check that you're on the correct Wi-Fi. For some reason, my phone goes to a random Xfinity Wi-Fi when I'm in some parts of my house. So I don't know, why that is, but I always check to make sure that I'm on my Wi-Fi, because I know that's secure and a good connectivity as well. So in terms of Rethink, if you are providing telehealth sessions, you need to make sure that your calendar and Rethink accurately reflects that. So the way that we do that is in 2 locations within the actual appointment in Rethink itself. So on the left-hand side, you can see place of service. Usually that says home, but in this case, you need to select telehealth. That will always be an option for you. There will always be telehealth there as an option. Whereas on the right-hand side, you need to also select the service that has telehealth in it. So if you are providing direct therapy, you should find the line that says direct therapy telehealth and enter that. Sometimes that isn't an option there. So if that's the case, you'll select the regular direct therapy line that's in there. And then, like I said before, you need to make sure that the place of service box says telehealth, rather than home, which it usually says in your regular in-home sessions. For any technical support issues or questions with either Zoom or Rethink, we have our guy Justin to reach out to. He will be able to answer most, if not all, questions that anybody has about Zoom or Rethink. He is our technology guru. That said, he is definitely very busy, so be patient with him. He's usually really quick to get back to everybody with questions and concerns and issues, though. So he is our point person for both Zoom and Rethink. Some technology reminders. Make sure that your social media settings are set so there's no interruption in your session. That can be really distracting to you, to the parent, to the client, to anybody else who's on the call. So just make sure that those are set so that you can't be interrupted by those notifications. Make sure that your antivirus software is up to date. Make sure you have a stable Wi-Fi connection. Like I said before, that's definitely important. If you're using a mobile device, Wi-Fi is preferred just because it's stronger and more predictable versus cellular data plans. Cellular data plans can come and go in terms of the service you have. However, it does work to use cellular data plans. Requests for Wi-Fi at the home is definitely okay to do, especially if you are providing telehealth services, then that means they've already consented to such and will, be more than happy to give over their Wi-Fi password so that you can get logged in. And for any devices that could be stolen or not secured, make sure that you have access to remotely wipe the device to protect any client health information that could be stored on it. So prior to your first telehealth appointment, we want to make sure that you are good to go before, much more than a couple minutes before your first session. So make sure that you test the equipment, take the time to experiment and practice with the platform a little bit, log into your Zoom account, check it out, make sure you know how to turn on and off your audio and video. Those kinds of things can be really helpful to play around with before your first session. Know where to get some tech assistance, have that number ready, make a test run prior to work through any issues. Always adjust the camera so that you fill the screen as much as possible instead of also just seeing like half your face or the whole wall behind you, those kinds of things. Just make sure that it's really clearly you and that you know how to have the right angle and camera view. And make sure you check your equipment 15 to 30 minutes before a session. I also recommend having your computer or your phone charger near you so that you don't have to, run out of the middle of a session to go get your charger, because sometimes Zoom does suck the battery out of your device. So just make sure that you're prepared for that as well. In terms of a couple other points to make sure you're all set up prior to your telehealth appointment, just make sure the background has minimal distractions, that any decor behind you is professional. Make sure that you are dressed professionally. Even though you are at home, you should not be on Zoom in your pajamas. You still want to look professional conducting your video sessions just like you would in the home. Make sure that you have good lighting. Natural lighting is the best, but really just make sure that it's, you're not very, dark on the screen, that they can see you, that the lighting is good enough in that room. And then make sure that you have good camera angles. So the position of the camera is an essential component, of creating that professional environment. So we want to make sure that they can see you, you can see them, and that it's, as much as possible like how it would be if you were in the room having a face-to-face conversation. Some other reminders during your appointment. Make sure, again, that you're maintaining KEYS dress code. Keep your site clean and free of clutter. Try to turn off any noise distractions like cell phones, any music on in the house, TVs, alerts, anything like that. Make sure that's turned off and not distracting. If possible, I recommend closing the door of the room that you're doing this video session in, especially if you have, a lot of people in the home as well, just to help ensure client privacy and minimize distractions. Check the lighting in the room. Close any drapes or blinds that might give a glare otherwise. Keep the lighting in front of you. Use natural gestures when you speak and avoid too much movement. If you're like me, you use your hands when you talk, and that can be really distracting because, if there's a lag in the camera or in the video, or you're talking with your hands and, that's taking up half of the screen, that can be really distracting when someone's trying to have a conversation with you. Another one to keep in mind too is try to smile, talk slowly to the camera, not your reflection in the monitor. So that can be really challenging at times because I find myself also always looking at myself talking, but try to look in that monitor, especially because of the clientele and the population that we serve. We need to be modeling appropriate eye contact. And if we're looking at ourselves, we are not looking at the camera, which is ultimately not looking at them. We are not engaging in appropriate eye contact from their view if we're not looking in the camera as well. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Always introduce yourself, present what the session's for, what your plan is, have some plan and structure in place beforehand. Like I said, that will change. That will be something that your BCBA will be working on with you and will be modeling for you in the first session or the first couple of sessions. But just it takes a little bit more preparation for telehealth services. If you're providing a direct therapy session for, an hour or 2 hours, you want to make sure that you know exactly what the flow is, what the structure is, and what your plan is in place prior to starting that session. A couple other things to keep in mind: make sure that you are identifying that there's not any airflow issues that could affect the microphone. So fans or AC units, an open window can be really distracting. Even if it's cracked a little bit, it's like when you make a phone call in the car and your window's down, it sounds horrible on the other end. So just make sure that you're identifying those things as well. When you first log in, just check to make sure they can hear you and see you okay. Try not to place any papers or objects near the microphone. That can be really loud if near the microphone, even if you barely notice it now. On your end, it can be really distracting. Same with rustling papers or things that are near that microphone at all. Put yourself on mute like we set up for today, just when you're not talking, so that you can eliminate any noise distraction on the other end. And this is a really big one here. Be patient with the parent. They are much more involved than typical in this process, and this will be highly individualized and a lot of adjusting as we go. We are most likely starting off very slowly here. So like I said, I can't emphasize that one enough. At this point, parents have had all of their kids home without school and without structure for almost 2 weeks. So that's one reason to be patient with them. Also, in terms of the services, it's just important to keep in mind, we're asking a lot of them for a lot of our clients, we're asking of a lot of them in terms of their involvement in session. And it's a learning curve for everybody, including the parents. So we just want to make sure we keep that in mind when we're working with them. So in terms of the transition to telehealth, given the coronavirus situation. So like I said before, your BCBA is the point person in terms of individualizing the programming for your client. We will be setting up the structure of the session and will provide much more frequent supervision during sessions, especially at the onset of services. We will help design a schedule that's appropriate for the client as well. So that's one really cool, kind of unique thing about the ability to provide telehealth services, is that we have the opportunity for much more flexible schedules. So your client could potentially do several 1-hour sessions instead of the typical set block schedule. The BCBA will help facilitate this schedule and the development of it, but it can be really a good opportunity to work on different things at different times of day, be able to split it up so that there's some more structure throughout the day rather than just during one block of time. A couple other benefits about this is that cancellations might not be as impactful. If you and the client have availability later in the day, you can probably reschedule for that time. We also have the benefit of not being interrupted or delayed with commute or late arrivals or reduced hours due to travel delays, those kinds of things. So that's another great benefit. And then we also have the opportunity to have that fly on the wall approach quite a bit more. I don't know how many times I say that in a regular week, where I wish I could be a fly on the wall in that room. And now we kind of get the opportunity to do that, which is a pretty exciting thing, to get an idea of what goes on in the home without having the variable of us being in the home with the family. So that can be really helpful with programming and with the ABA that we're providing as well. Another great benefit of providing supervision and direct services and parent training is that we can support our clients and families who are struggling to adjust to this new norm. We don't know how long this is going to go on for. I know that Governor Baker just announced a little while ago that in Massachusetts, schools are closed until May 4th now. So we know that we're going for a significant amount of time for many more weeks in terms of this new norm. So being able to provide telehealth services is really going to help families and clients adjust to that and come up with some type of structure and consistency over this time where you know, we're in this new norm that none of us really know what we're doing. We haven't done this before, but we are working on it together so that we can best support our clients and families. Also, the BCBA's initial supervision or parent training can help identify what we can work on a little bit differently given this new norm. So we can work on different skills that may not have been applicable before, but now really make a lot of sense to work on. So it gives us the flexibility to do that in terms of programming. The BCBA can provide the family with additional visual supports and daily schedules and routines and things like that that otherwise we wouldn't do. So that's going to be helpful as well. As the BT, you might carry these over during your direct BT sessions as well. So the BCBA will discuss the nature of all of these different components of telehealth services and design a plan for services moving forward. And then we'll have that conversation with you if they haven't already. For parent training, some great benefits here is that we can provide more parent training. We have the opportunity for more flexible schedules with parents and BCBAs. We have the opportunity to have that fly on the wall approach again. And parents can be much more involved with the implementation of the therapy as well. So they can work on maintenance goals and behavior intervention. They'll probably get a better understanding of why we do things the way that we do and some more background on the implementation of the programming that we implement. So we have a lot of resources that helped us identify these main introductory points for telehealth. And so if you're interested in any of these kinds of things, please reach out. We have been doing our best to educate ourselves on telehealth as much as possible and using as many resources as we can to provide the best services that we can. And then one last thing before I go to questions here is just that we want to best support you guys, like I said at the beginning here, and we're trying to develop some different sites to help do that. Given the nature that we are already a relatively remote company, and that is expanding now in terms of the level of remote services we're providing. That said, we want to encourage collaboration and communication even more so during these times. So we have created 2 different platforms here. So we have Telegram, which is a texting platform used to collaborate with all company BTs. And we have your direct managers in there. So myself, Jen Scott, Stephanie and Austin, we are all in there to answer any questions that you have. And we will also be giving you any pertinent updates related to COVID-19 or otherwise. So we'll keep this running after the COVID-19 crisis in terms of having a great texting platform for you guys to use. And then I just put in here the communication source so that you know if you're not set up for Telegram yet, please do so. Your BT manager, so myself or Jen Scott, we sent out an email 2 days ago with all of the login information. It takes like 2 minutes to sign up and sign in. So please do so if you haven't done that already. And then we also have a SharePoint collaboration site, which you guys will be given access to via email. It'll be used to view any and all documentation that you need, like the BT handbook, job descriptions, and then there will be a lot of resources in there on COVID-19 as well. So you will receive an email on that and how to access that within the next couple of days as well. So I just wanted to share those with you and let you guys know that we, again, are encouraging collaboration, communication, especially during these difficult times. And so we have these nice outlets for you to do so. So all of that said, I know that was a ton of information in the last hour, but I want to give some time for questions here. So if anybody has questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask away. No questions. Guess we're getting more thorough by the minute. All right, so if anybody has, Steph, was that you? No?
No, I'm just I just actually unmuted myself because I wanted to thank everyone again for taking the time tonight, such a late amount of time to come and join the training. And I'm actually, if there's no questions, Caitlin, I'm going to actually sign off and let you take attendance.
Yep, awesome. All right, so I believe that I have, sorry, was that a question? I just didn't mean to talk over you.
Yeah, I did have actually one question. So you said that when we're putting our sessions into Resync, you said that it might come up as direct therapy, but nothing else, like no telehealth add-on. So we should just put it in as direct therapy?
Yep, yeah, so it depends on the insurance provider, but some of them don't have like a separate code, basically it's called, for Telehealth Direct. If that's the case, it's okay to just select the regular direct therapy one that doesn't say telehealth. Just double check, triple check that it says in the location, like the delivery service box on the left, that the location, it says telehealth, not home. And that will be an option no matter the insurance company. So just double check to make sure that that's checked off as telehealth.
Oh, okay, sure. And
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no worries. I just wanted to know how soon that it's looking like we'll be able to do that.
So that
direct
depends
therapy
on
with telehealth.
Yeah, so that depends on your client. So if you are interested in providing telehealth services and you're not currently providing direct in-person services, then reach out to your BCBA. Even if you're just curious about whether or not your client can receive services, you can ask your BCBA. That's all individualized, so you'll just want to check with them. They'll be your kind of point person for that. So you can reach out to your BCBA to get more information there.
Okay. Okay, and are there new cases that you can take with telehealth services, or do you have to have already been in person?
So that's a great question. So yes and no, both ways.
I can actually answer that one. I was going to say, Caitlin, I can actually chime in too. This is Stephanie.
Perfect.
We do have situations, and so if you are in fact interested in getting more hours, then you can contact your PT manager, or you can also contact client services and let them know you're interested in taking on more hours as well.
Okay. All right. That's perfect. Thank you.
I had a question regarding the Zoom account. So I just want to make sure that I'm clear. So we cannot use the ones that we're using now. We'll have to use one under the umbrella of Key, correct?
Yes. So if you have an account, so from my understanding, if you have an account on your email address that you use for all Key communications, we will still be able to set up a Key email or a Key account under that same email. What you do for it is you'll follow the links to that sent via email from Key, and then it gives you an option to switch account. So you'll hit switch account, and that will put you under the Key umbrella. Stephanie, if you're still on, can you just verify if that's correct?
Yes, that is correct. I actually had to do this myself because I had my own personal Zoom account, and originally they had sent me an email linked to my Gmail account that I was using initially. Sent me out an invite. It went to my Gmail account, and so when I logged in, that's attached to my personal Zoom account, and it offered me the option to switch or link my account to under the Key umbrella. So what we want to make sure of is just that whatever email you have on file, which clearly is going to be the one they're going to send you the invite to from Key for Zoom, but whatever email you use for work with Key, and if that's associated with your personal account, you just want to switch to be under the umbrella of Key. So that way, if we're ever audited or there's any questions or from insurance companies or anything of that nature, it falls under our umbrella. We can provide them with the information relevant to the sessions, and obviously you're protected when it comes to HIPAA and all of that stuff.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
All right, awesome. So if nobody else has any other questions, I'm just going to run through my attendance one more time to make sure I have everybody. So if I don't say your name at the end of this list, please, please, please let me know that you're here, whether you put your name in the chat or just unmute and tell me that you're here. So otherwise, I'm just going to run through this. And then if I don't say your name, please, like I said, let me know at the end. So I have Andrins R, Shakia B, Melissa, Sahida, Mandy, Curtis, hey Curtis, Courtney Powell, Amanda Catalano, Lissa G, Brooke Mann, Antoine Hall, Kelly Riley, Justin Harmon, and Brittany Sharp. Is there anybody else here that I didn't just say? All right, I said everybody's name. Oh,
Yes.
You didn't say my name.
okay, and who is this? Who is speaking?
Jimmy Rye Gordon.
Okay, perfect. All right, awesome. All right, you guys, if you have any questions over the next couple of days, or if you hop off this call and you're like, shoot, I meant to ask that, please reach out to myself or Jen Scott, your BT manager, or Steph Nostin, who was on this call as well. And otherwise, thank you guys so much for your hard work and dedication, especially during this COVID-19 crisis. And have a great rest of your night, and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.